Good evening. So today we'll be studying child development. Okay. So that is a chapter in a module in our net syllabus. So it encompasses child development or human development. So let's see what all are there. So it is also called as human development. It is a scientific study of the pattern of changes that happens in an individual from prenatal beginnings to the early years of adolescence. It is a scientific study of child behavior and it covers all aspects related to growth and behavior. So here we might find it really simple child development. We have all gone through a lot of stages of development and growth, but here in our syllabus here we have a lot of theories coming up, but it's very interesting. You just have to remember some names and other things are very simple here. Okay. So what all are there in child development? So child development encompasses physical, cognitive, social, personality development. It ranges from the stages from conception through adolescence. That is when you are in your womb, from the mother's womb, that is in the pregnancy stage itself, the child development starts, right? When a mother and father conceives a baby, from that time onwards the growth and development starts, and it for in the sense of a child development it proceeds till adolescence. And when you're talking about human development, that is till the person dies. Okay, so child development, when you're using the term child development, it is from the conception through adolescence till you're a teenager, till the age of 16, 17, or some definitions can even extend it up to 19 years. Okay, so child development is a scientific approach to answer questions about growth, changes, stability that occurs in individuals from conception to adolescence. Now we are discussing two terms here, that is growth and development. Now, at first sight, we might think that growth and development are the same, but then there are a lot of differences in these two terms. Growth represents mostly the physical changes of an individual, and development represents overall changes, the structure, shape, etc. So we will discuss about each of them in detail. So growth terms represent a purely physical sense of a person, like height, weight, size, length, etc. Growth is quantitative. It starts with conception but ends at some particular age. We know that some people, you must have heard saying that you will only grow your height up till a particular age, like 21 years of age, etc. So growth in a physical sense, it is very quantitative. You can measure it. For example, you can measure your weight, your height, size, etc. It's very easy. You know your shoe size, you know how long your hand is if you just measure it with a tape, etc. And it also, it's in the physical sense, it ends at some particular age. Now Herlock, here in child development, the most important person here you will discuss about is Elizabeth Herlock. Now she has given a lot of definitions for most of the things in child development. So here is the first one, that is definition of growth. So growth is defined in child development as change in size in proportion, disappearance of old features and acquisition of new ones. Now here it is completely in a physical sense. For example, in a child, when you are looking at a baby it changes its size, it changes in proportion. Proportion means like in interior design we had discussed about proportion, right? How one part relates with another. For example, if you see a very small baby, a newborn baby, you can see that the baby's head is pretty big compared to the rest of the body. The head is is kind of 1/4 the size of the baby. Okay, but when the child grows into adolescent, into childhood, into adolescence, etc., the head is the proportion of the head is slightly lesser. It comes as to 1/8 of the body. So you see there is a change in proportion also, how one part of the body relates to the other parts of the body. So there is change in size, change in proportion, disappearance of old features. Old features means, for example, a child, some children, they'll have the habit of thumb sucking. They have the sucking reflexes, etc. Now this is a particular It is very common in very small children, but then after sometimes, like after the child grows, those features will disappear, and then accusation of new ones. They will develop new habits, new patterns of growth. So that is what growth is in a purely physical sense. Now, what does development imply? Development implies the overall change in shape, form, structure, along with the functions of the organ. Development can be both qualitative and quantitative. Now, what do you mean by quantitative? Quantitative is something that you can measure in terms of quantity. For example, it's very easy to measure your weight or height. You can just stand on your weighing machine and you know your weight. But in the same time, some developmental features, for example, how you are developing as a social individual, what is your social skills, how you deal with people, what is your emotional skills. It's very difficult to measure it. Like how do you deal with people, or how you can deal with your emotions, etc. Such things are a part of development. Now those things are not very quantitative, they are usually qualitative. How you are dealing with your people around you, how you are faring well with your peers, etc. Such social cognitive skills, such things are mostly qualitative in nature. Now development is a continuous process that starts from the womb and ends with your tomb. That is, till you die, development grows. You are growing inside, you are developing different skills. For example, now you are all here, you have joined for this course to develop yourself, right? So this is something that it is not a physical thing. You are developing in other terms, like you are developing your skills, your knowledge, etc. So development is a continuous and a gradual process. This is according to Skinner. He is also another famous psychologist. Now another definition, it is according to Crow and Crow in 1965. Now these were these definitions you need to remember, because sometimes the questions come in case of according to Crow and Crow, what is the definition of the development, etc. So development is concerned with growth as well as those changes in behavior which results from environmental situations. Okay, that is how it is development. So development is not just your physical growth, it is not a quantitative thing, but it also uh, deals with change in behavior which results from environmental situations. Now, why do you have to study child development? What is the significance of studying child development? First one is understand children, their developmental levels. Then you can provide individual guidance of children according to their growth status. You know how it is, like you can give them guidance where what they are capable of, how they can go on with their lives, etc. Then you can solve behavioral problems of children. There are a lot of behavioral problems, like different behavior. We'll be discussing about different behavioral problems, like nail biting, such things. Small behavioral problems are there. Even big ones, delinquency, things like that also are also there. So such how to deal with all those things. Then to know what to expect from a child of a given age. For example, a 6-month-old baby is expected to sit upright. So these because if in child development, the scientific when what milestones you will achieve in what age, etc. At what time your child is expected to walk, what time he's expected to jump, etc. So then it also tells about the teachable moment, most receptive time. Teachable moment means what you can teach to a baby, or to a growing child. You are not able to, for example, you cannot introduce multiplication tables to a normal child at the age of 2, right? So there is a particular age at which you can introduce them to all those things. The most receptive time, when can you teach them ABCD, when can you teach them multiplication, when can you teach them division? So there are times when you can teach them, when they are receptive. You can't just as and when you wish, you can't you just give your own teach your own child, like they expect them to do something which they can't do. So these are called as teachable moments. Now help, the next one is help parents and teachers to prepare the child ahead of time for the changes that will take place in him. So we know that if your a child has to go to school, you can prepare her beforehand. You can just tell him or her how the school will be, how she can manage with her friends and things like that. So you know how to prepare the child for changes or challenges, etc. Then help to understand our adult behavior. So most of the time I can say that children, how their childhood experiences determine how they behave as adults. So if the child has a good, environment in the childhood, they are most likely to have a good adulthood. But if they have a troubled upbringing, then a lot of problems can occur in their adult life also. So it is a unhigh. You can help. You can understand adult. You can predict adult behavior based on their childhood experiences. Then study personality and related problems, social issues like conflicts, prejudices, etc. can be addressed. So a lot of importance is given to studying this field. Now let's discuss about the areas of child development. Now, certain terms you need to remember. What are areas? What are, there are certain terms like principles of child development is there, areas of child development is there. So here areas means which all fields or which all areas the child will develop. For example, physical is an area of development. Okay, physical development means you are growing physically. The change in size, shape, physical maturity, including physical abilities, coordination. For example, if a child is learning to walk, child is learning to jump, child is growing in size, length wise. Such things are called as change in shape, size, etc. Physical maturity. Now, intellectual development means your cognition, learning and use of language, ability to reason, problem solving, organizing ideas. It is related to the physical growth of the brain. How you use language, how you can solve problems, organize ideas, ability to reason, logical thinking, etc. Now, social development is basically dealing with how you gain knowledge and skill needed to interact successfully with others, how you perform in the society. As a social individual, how do you cope with the surroundings? The next one is emotional development. How you are expressing your feelings, how you respond to events, changes in understanding one's feelings, appropriate forms of expressing, etc. Moral development. Now, moral development means what your values, the growing understand of what is right, what is wrong, what are the change in behavior caused by that understanding. Sometimes it's called as a conscience. Most people have this moral development is completely varying for different people. Some for what is right for somebody might be wrong for somebody, things like that. So moral development is values, what you value to be right and wrong, changes in behavior, etc. So these are the different areas of development. Moral development, emotional, how you deal with your feelings. Then social development is the skills needed to interact with others. Intellectual is all about your brain, your ability of language, reasoning, problem solving, etc. Physical is about your growth, physical abilities, etc. Now let's discuss about the principles of growth and development. Principles means the growth and development will follow certain patterns. For each individual, it will have a particular pattern. Now let's discuss what are the principles. The first principle is development is a continuous thing. That is, the process of growth and development continues from conception till the individual reaches maturity. Development of both physical and mental traits continues gradually until these traits reach their maximum growth. It goes on continuously throughout life. Even after maturity has been achieved, development does not end. So we have discussed that growth to a particular growth, especially physical growth and all, till maturity or till adulthood. After some time, the growth stops. But when you're dealing with development is a continuous process. It starts from your prenatal means at the time when you're in the womb of your mother till you die. The next one is most traits are correlated in development. Means some like for example mental areas or physical development. For example, it is seen very commonly that child whose mental development is above average is also superior in so many other aspects like health, social ability, special aptitudes, etc. So certain things which are correlated in development. For example, if a child is handicapped or is not grown physically, then he will have problems in his social life, emotional lives, etc. So that is why what is called most traits are correlated in development. Then development is sequential. Sequential means it follows a pattern, a sequential order. Now, every species, whether a human, follows a pattern of development. For example, you know that a child crawls before he creeps, stands before he walks, babbles before he talks. So it is a sequence. It's a step-by-step process. Nobody walks or nobody dances in the first day of their birth, right? So it's everything happens in a sequential manner. Now, principles of individual difference. This is very important. Now, every organism is a distinct creation in itself. There is everybody has individual differences wherein in terms of development and growth. There is no fixed rate of development that all children will walk is like we can't say that every child will walk at the age of 1. There might be children who walk at the age of 8 months. There will be children who walk only after 2 years. So it is different from each other. You know, the rate of development for each individual is different. It depends on a number of factors. Now, principles of a pattern or although development does not proceed at a uniform rate, it shows marked individual differences concerning the process and outcome of various stages. But what happens is there is a definite pattern. For example, uniformity in pattern means even though the rate is different, what happens is, example, you know that a child, a baby who is expected, a child grows in a or a uniform pattern. For example, child will first have a head control. He starts to roll over, then he starts to sit, then he starts to crawl, then he starts to stand, then he stands to starts walking, etc. So this is a pattern. That pattern is uniform for all the children. So this is a pattern that almost all the children will follow. For example, that is starting with rolling over, starts with a gaining head control, rolling over, sitting, then standing, then walking, etc. So this is a uniform pattern. The principles of proceeding from general to specific. Now, any aspect of growth or development, it starts from general to specific. For example, general means, for example, if a ball is thrown at a baby, initially the baby will catch it with both his hands. That is, first initially he will have control of the arms. Okay, then the fingers. That is, the baby first starts using his whole hands, to catch things and hold objects, etc. And then later he goes into specific. That is, later he starts to use the fingers, specific fingers. He'll gain control of his fingers or toes, etc. So initially it is general, and then it proceeds to specific. So that is what proceeding from general to specific. Principle of interaction between heredity and environment. Now, what is heredity? Heredity means what is there in our genes, what what we cannot control. See, heredity means if I was born in this family, in a particular family, in a particular region, etc. I had no control over it. I had absolutely no control of where I was born or anything like that. It is the genetic material, right? So heredity is what is passed on from generation to generation. What my parents have passed on through the genetic material, through the DNA, etc. That is what is heredity. Now, environment is where you are living, the physical environment. Like what all are there? What school do you go to? Which what are your society in which you live? The family support that you get. Such things are the environment. Now, there are certain interaction between heredity and environment. Somebody's certain features of growth are completely determined by heredity. For example, your height. If both your mother and your father are very tall, they are above 6 feet, then definitely there are high chances that you are also going to be very tall. Now, environment also plays a role in this height. For example, if you are if both your parents are 6 feet tall, but then you're not given good food or nutritious protein food, you're not given at their good age, I mean your growing years, what happens is that you will not be able to reach that potential of your height. So it depends. So there is an interaction between heredity and environment during growth and development. So in a lot of things, heredity and environment, what all is passed on from generation to generation, and also what is there in your environment. Both these things play a very important role. Now, different rates of development, just like we have said, different individual differences are there. Inside an individual also, there are different rates of development. For example, the hands, feet, nose will reach maximum development by early adolescence. By the time you are 13, 14 years of age itself, your hands, your feet, your nose have, reached the maximum growth. But the lower part of your face, like your chin, your shoulder, etc., will develop more slowly. It will grow up to adulthood. So the rate of development is different in different areas, even within the individual. From different parts of the body develop at different rates. Now, there is another very, very important term that you have to write down, cephalocaudal. Now, this is principle of cephalocaudal and proximodistal. Two terms are coming up. So, please note this down, cephalocaudal. Cephalo means head. Okay. Now, cephalocaudal means development proceeds in the direction of longitudinal axis. That is, development starts from head to toe. That is why before you are able to stand, the child first gains control over his head and arms, and then only on his legs. So just imagine a baby. First of all, he gets a head control, right? First, when he starts to roll over at the age of 3 months or so, the child starts to gain the control over his head. And then he starts to sit. And then at last he starts to stand. So that is what is, it proceeds from head to toe. Gain control of head, then arms, then the torso, and then finally the legs. So initially also, just like I have said about the proportion, head was in when the baby is really small, when a newborn baby, if you just see, head is very large related to the rest of the body. And then slowly, the proportion will change when you're in the adulthood. Okay, so for the term is cephalocaudal, means head to toe. Next term is proximodistal. Proximodistal means from center to outward. So development of motor skills to start at central bodies to outwards. For example, the child is seen to exercise control over large muscles, and then hand, and then the smaller muscles of the fingers. Just like I said, how gradual, I mean, from general to specific, just like that. Initially, the child will gain control over his big muscles, that is his shoulder, his head, his arms, then his hands, and then at last his fingers. So that is what is center to outward, that is proximodistal. So these two terms, please note it down so that you don't forget it. Proximodistal means center to outward. Cephalocaudal means from head to toe. So this is these are very two important terms that is used as a principle of child development. Now this I have again written it down here so that it's even more clearer. That is, cephalocaudal law means progressive development of skills and ability which starts in our head and ends in our feet. Then that is a vertical movement. Then proximodistal means progressive development of skills and ability from the center of the body towards the periphery, that is shoulder, elbow, wrist, and last with fingers. Initially, the child will get control over the shoulders, then he'll start moving his elbow, wrist, and then very specifically the fingers. Now the next one is predictability. Now development is predictable. For example, you know that it has a uniform pattern, right? We have discussed in another principle. So to an extent, you can forecast the general nature of and behavior of a child in one or more respects at any particular stage. We can know the particular age at which children will walk, speak, and so on. We can predict how the child is going to develop by how he is developing at this particular age. Now, then your lack of there is a rate of, there is it is, this principle is the same. There is in within an individual itself, there is a lack of uniformity in the developmental rate. That is, the person may have a high rate of growth and development in terms of height and weight, but may not have the same pace of mental and social development. So within the individual itself, there will be a change in the developmental rate. Now the next one is association of maturation and learning. Now, maturation means it is a biological process. Means maturation comes naturally. There is biological changes involves the brain, nervous system, etc. For example, a child on its own will learn how to walk, how to start standing, etc., without much of a support. You don't you don't give much training for those things, right? That is a part of a maturity. And there are certain things that are learned. Development will proceed from simple to complex. For example, uh, in the case of learning, what happens is maturation means it's a natural process. The child will mature, learn certain things as and when the child grows. Now learning means it comes and it is an extra job. That is, the child learning ABC or multiplication or any mathematical laws, etc., those are things that are given from others or something that is learned from outside. No, that is so the child, there is an association of maturation and learning. Just like I've said, you can introduce learning or teach something to a child only when the child is ready to learn. So this, there is an association with maturation and learning. You can't just learn you can't just teach your child to learn big concepts or theories at a very small age. They have to be mature enough to understand them, to take it in. Now let's move on to the different factors that affect growth and development. There are different factors that affect growth and development. First one is hereditary factors. Hereditary factors, just like I've mentioned, hereditary is something that is genetic material, whatever the child carries from the parents. It is genetically transferred from one generation to the next. So the most of the physical characteristics like height, weight, color of the eyes, psychological characteristics such as intelligence, creativity, most of them are taken from the hereditary itself. The genetic code provides the base on which brain and body grow and manifest in observable appearance and behavior. So a lot of things are hereditary. Like example, color of eyes and all are totally, color of your hair, color of your eyes, etc., are completely hereditary in nature, because you can't have any control over all that. Then nutrition, of course, nutrition plays a very important role in overall development and growth of an individual. Like from the time the baby is in the womb of the mother till adulthood, individuals should get nutritious food to lead a healthy life, right? So balance and nutritional diet will help provide all the necessary nutrients which are needed for mental and physical strength. So nutrition plays a very good important role in human development. Next one is environmental factors. Environmental factors means where the person lives. What is the environment? What is surrounding the child? There is a different range of stimuli are there. It provides a necessary input. It gives a base for development. Enrichment or impoverishment of the environment will produce difference in abilities. For example, if the child is having an enriched environment, is taken to a good school, given a lot of materials to learn, etc., naturally the child will learn better compared to an impoverished environment. Impoverished means if the child is in a very bad state. For example, it is in war areas where if there are a lot of problems in the society, there is a famine or a earthquake struck areas, or there are a lot of calamities, naturally the child will suffer a lot based on their environment. Then for example, even environment can also give a lot of boost to the hereditary capacity. For example, a child may have inherited some musical talent from his parents, but he may not excel in music field if he does not get the proper environment and support to develop his innate ability. So only if he is given encouragement, if only somebody, if he's able to recognize his talents, then only he'll be able to grow in that. Even though he will have some genetic disposition for all this, if he is not not getting the proper environment to grow his talents, naturally he will not succeed. So growth, environment and heredity both play a very important role in a child's development. Then home environment, of course, you can never underestimate the environment, the influence of the home, because the home environment exerts tremendous influence on a child's external world. It builds the self-esteem, concept, prepares him to face the external world at large. So the child begins to acquire knowledge through interaction with parents, family members, etc. So the development completely is modulated by the home environment. If it is supportive, warm and harmonious, naturally the child will develop normally. In a very stressful home environment like broken families, uncaring parents, the children may have a lot of adjustment problems. Then cultural factors. Cultural factors means the system of beliefs, attitudes, values, etc. Like religious practices, the culture in which you are living, etc. They will have a lot of changes, a lot of influence on the child's behavior, the habit, beliefs, skills, etc. Like we know that how different Indian and Western cultures are, right? For in Western cultures and all, like when you greet a person, you are it's very common to handshakes or kissing, saying hello, etc. is very common. But in Indian culture, it's not the same. So such things, how the child grows or values what is good or bad, moral development, etc. are influenced greatly by the culture. Then socioeconomic status, definitely. Socioeconomic status plays a very important role in human development. That is, how the what all other socioeconomic status means the education, the occupation of the parents, the income level, etc. Now, children of low socioeconomic status may be malnourished. They will not be getting enough food. Then they may suffer from a lack of knowledge in many aspects. Then the parents may be also be differently. They will be very uh, not very supportive if they are not getting enough money or enough it is not the environment is not favorable for them. Then children of high socioeconomic status will get better opportunities. They are having good nutrition, better medical treatment, they are exposed to more intellectual stimulation, better schools, better education, etc. Then education and training. What the child is equipped with certain abilities, they have to be nurtured through proper education and training. Just like we had said earlier, if even if he has a musical talent, if it is not nurtured or it is not trained properly, naturally he will not succeed. So the first and foremost step is to identify and recognize the ability of the child, and then provide adequate opportunities to develop it. First of all, you need to identify the abilities, and then only you can provide the facilities which he need to develop. For example, if there is a musical talent, naturally he should be given a opportunities to take part in programs. Then should be given the musical instruments should be provided. Then only he will be able to develop the skills. So these are the different factors affecting human development, and different principles and factors affecting human development. So does anybody have any doubts?
No, ma'am.